This is a quick demo of how to build Bedrock agents. But before we jump into building a Bedrock agent, let's look at what are the components of a Bedrock agent and what steps are included to build the agent. At the heart of an agent is the foundation model. The foundation model provides the reasoning and intelligence capabilities. Think of foundation model as the brain of the agent. Resources represents the data that the agents can access. This could be knowledge bases, typical databases, or any other information stores that helps the agents to answer questions. Tools and actions are components how the agent interacts with the external world. These are specific capabilities that the agent can use to perform tasks such as searching the web, performing calculations, or even connecting to external systems. Guardrails provide the safety mechanisms that ensure that the agents operate within their defined boundaries. Sessions and memory component enables the agent to maintain context during interactions. Think of multi-turn conversations. This allows for coherent conversations and helps agents to remember exchanges. Finally, the prompt. This is how the agent instructions are provided to the agent. How does Bedrock provide all these capabilities? Bedrock provides a model hub which has access to close to 180 plus models. You can select any of these models and associate it as a brain to your agent. From a resources side of things, Bedrock provides knowledge bases, and you can essentially build knowledge bases based on 6 different capabilities, starting from OpenSearch, Postgres, MongoDB, Pinecone, etc. The tools and actions are typically implemented using a Lambda function. In addition to providing a capability through Lambda function, Bedrock also has a built-in code interpreter. Bedrock also provides Bedrock guardrails. Guardrails are configurable components through which you can essentially protect your prompts and responses to the agent. For session and memory aspects, Bedrock has a built-in capability for session and memory management. So any conversations that you do with Bedrock agents gets automatically stored. Bedrock also provides default prompts for post-processing, pre-processing, as well as for orchestration. However, if you choose to change any of these prompts, you could essentially change all of these prompts. So this at a very high level, how Bedrock agents operate. So now let's look at how to build a Bedrock agent. Essentially, to build a Bedrock agent, there are only 3 steps. Step 1 is about designing the agent. Step 2, you prepare the agent. Think about compiling the agent to operate. Finally, you can invoke the agent. Most of the activities happen in designing the agent. All the components that we looked at in the previous slide are the ones that needs to be configured during the design of an agent. This starts with configuring the model that the agent is going to operate, the instructions for the agent, and if you want the agent to interact with a human for additional information. You also need to configure tools, knowledge bases, and guardrails. As I mentioned earlier, memory and prompts are built in. However, Bedrock, during the design of the agent, you could potentially go and modify the prompts for different stages. Finally, the orchestration strategy. This could be either a React-based agent or a Revo agent. Once you've configured all of these capabilities, then all you need to do is to compile the agent, which is where the preparing the agent comes into play. And finally, once the agent is prepared, you can go ahead and invoke the agent. So these are the only 3 steps that are required for you to build a Bedrock agent. Now let's go into building a Bedrock agent. Our use case is to build a HR assistant. The purpose of this HR assistant agent are 2 things. Number 1 is to answer questions about any org-wide HR policies. Number two, manage employee vacation request. I might have a vacation request and I want to send my vacation request to the agent, and the agent takes the action on my behalf. For configuring this Bedrock agent, we are going to use Claude 3.5 as the model. We are going to associate a knowledge base which is built on OpenSearch to this agent. We will also have a tool for managing employee vacation requests. We'll also associate a guardrail. This guardrail specifically looks at any kind of financial advices that is requested by the employee. Say, for example, the employee might say, give me how do I invest my money, right? So you do not want your agent to respond to any such queries. So we're going to set up a guardrail for that purpose. We are going to use the built-in session and memory management that is provided by Bedrock Agents. And similarly, for this particular demo, we will use the default prompts. However, in the demo, I will show you a place where you can actually go ahead and change these prompts. Now that you understand what are the components of the Bedrock agent and the steps that are required to build the Bedrock agent, let's go ahead and build the agent in the console. Now I'm going to switch to my AWS console. I'm going to log into my AWS account. And I'm going to go into Bedrock. On the left pane of the screen, you have agents. But before we go into agents, let's look at the three major components that are required to be associated to the agent. Those are knowledge bases, the tools, and the guardrails. I already have created all these three different components. Let's look at the knowledge base that I have created. I click on knowledge bases, and I have a knowledge base which says HR policies. So this knowledge base is already created, built on top of OpenSearch. It has information from documents from an S3 bucket. I'm not going to build a knowledge base here, but all I'm showing you is a knowledge base has already been created. Similarly, I've already built a guardrail. Let me show you the guardrail. I click on guardrails on the left hand side of the screen. Here is a guardrail that blocks any kind of request for financial advices. Inside the guardrail, when I say edit, these are all the informations that are set for the guardrail. I have set a bunch of information around harmful categories, from filtering out hate, insults, discussions on sexual violence and misconduct. Similarly, I have also added a topic. This topic is about financial advices. So if I edit this topic, this is going to say that any inquiries or guidance, recommendations towards allocation of funds or assets for any kind of financial objectives should not be answered. That is the guardrail that I have created. So we've looked at knowledge bases, we've looked at guardrails. Finally, the tools or the actions. As I mentioned, actions are built on Lambda functions. I'm going to show you this Lambda function that has been created already. This is a Lambda function that has been created. The purpose of this Lambda function is to take a request from the user when the user is asking for any kind of vacation details. So it could be applying vacations or it could be checking for leave balances and so on. So I'm not going to look at the code right now, but this is a tool that has already been created. I'm going to close Lambda for now. Let's go back to Bedrock. So we talked about three different components. Component number one, knowledge bases. Component number two, guardrails. Component number three is the tool. Now that we have all the components set up, let's go ahead and create the agent. I'm going to click on agents. I'm going to say create agent. Let's give it a name. I'm going to call it HR agent. This is going to be a single agent, hence I'm not going to enable the multi-agent collaboration. I'm going to say create. So this is the most important screen for creating this agent. All the information and the components that we need to configure will be configured in this particular page. The first thing is about selecting the model. This, as I said, this is the brain of the agent. And here we are going to select an Anthropic Claude 3.5 Sonnet model. I'm going to say 3.5 Sonnet V1. Now we have associated to the model. You need to provide the instructions for the agent. The instructions are extremely important because this instruction is the one that defines the environment of the agent, as in what the agent can and cannot do, and what kind of information is provided to the agent. Let's add some instructions here. So I've provided an instruction saying you're a helpful AI assistant supporting a particular company called Octank. You have been provided with a coding environment, Python coding environment. You're also provided with database with information about HR policies and so on. Right. Since we already mentioned that I've provided you with a coding environment, I'm going to add the code interpreter as a coding environment as well. So as I mentioned, this is a built-in tool that helps you to do calculations as a coding environment. Step one is complete, where we have provided the model that the agent is going to use and the instructions for the agent. I'm just going to save the agent. Now, once this is complete, step two is configuring action groups, which are the tools, the knowledge bases, and the guardrail. We already have action groups, knowledge bases, and guardrails created. All we're going to do in this agent creation step is to associate those created components to the agent. Let's go to knowledge bases first. I'm going to select a knowledge base which is created, which is HR policies, and I'm going to provide some instructions for the knowledge base. Saying that this knowledge base contains information about HR policies. So add. So we've already associated a knowledge base to my agent. Now let's go to the guardrails and associate the created guardrail. I'm going to say edit. Select this guardrail and save. Now the guardrail is also associated. Finally, let's come to the actions, which is the Lambda function. So here I'm going to say add. I'm going to give it a name, something like a vacation details. Description is optional. I'm just going to leave it out. And in here, I'm going to say select an existing Lambda function. Remember, this Lambda function has the code that does retrieval of any vacation or applying any kind of leave. I'm going to say PTO function. The last thing that I need to do is to provide the description of the tool to the agent. Providing the description of the tool to the agent helps the agent to understand when to call this particular tool. The description of the agent is provided in an OpenAPI schema. This OpenAPI schema can be provided either as a YAML or a JSON description. I'm going to use JSON here, and I'm going to copy paste the OpenAPI schema that defines what the agent does. Delete this and add the OpenAPI schema. So I'm going to quickly show what the OpenAPI schema does. It says processing a vacation request. It takes an input of the number of days the employee is asking for vacation, and it's going to take that and apply the vacation for the apply the leave in the system. That is it, right? So just to rephrase, I've already created the Lambda function. So I'm associating the Lambda function here, providing an action group name. The description which defines what the Lambda function does is required for the agent so that the agent knows when to use this tool. So that is provided in the OpenAPI schema, and I've already associated the agent, the Lambda that has been created. I'm going to click on create. Okay. So let's revisit what we have done. So this is some metadata information about the agent and the description. The brain of the agent, the model here, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and the instruction for the agent. The tool that we have associated to the agent, the tool definition is in Lambda. I can enable a memory, but I'm just going to leave it as default here. The knowledge base, which is the HR policies knowledge base. The guardrails. Finally, the orchestration strategy. We talked about prompts, and here is where you can essentially overwrite a pre-processing prompt, an orchestration prompt, post-processing prompt, and so on. I'm going to leave it to default here, but I'm going to show you the prompts and where you can update it. When I click on edit, you can see these very detailed prompts with configurations. So in the pre-processing stage, it's saying, you're a classifying agent that filters, so on and so forth. So when the request comes in, how does the agent process this request and what kind of route that it needs to take? Everything is defined in this pre-processing step. Similarly, an orchestration step, post-processing step, and so on and so forth. We're just going to leave it to default for now for the purpose of this discussion. I'm going to say save and exit. Now my entire agent is created. I can say save and exit. So step 1, which is the designing the agent, is complete. Now this agent needs to be compiled or prepared for it to be invoked. If you see on the right hand side of the screen, there is a place where you can actually prepare the agent. I'm going to click prepare agent. That is it. So the agent is already compiled and prepared. Now I can start invoking the agent and test the agent right in this screen. So let's first test the guardrails. The guardrails should not be providing any kind of financial advice. So I'm going to say, should I invest in the Octane stock? Perfect. Sorry, I am a HR assistant agent and will not be able to provide information related to the financial advice. So this is the exact message that I've provided in my guardrail. At any point of time when the user asks for any kind of financial advice, please provide a very detailed information that you will not be able to provide any financial advice. Perfect. Now let's check how the agent is invoking my knowledge base. I'm going to say, what is the vacation policy? The vacation policies are managed within the knowledge base built on OpenSearch. So now when the request goes to the agent is going to look at the request, identify where to route the request depending upon the components that it has been associated with, which is the tools and the knowledge bases. And the agent identifies that to answer this question, it needs to go query the knowledge base, get the information, and provide the information in a human readable format. Once the action is complete, we can also look at the trace. Okay, let's first look at the response. So it says it says comprehensive paid time of program that covers blah blah blah. So this is all about the documentation that is already available within my knowledge base. So if I click on show trace, now let's look at the next question. I want the agent to take an action to apply 2 days leave. Now this is going to invoke the tool that is defined within my Lambda function. So the agent, when looking at this particular question, knows that it needs to invoke the tool and execute the tool. Perfect. So now this says you have requested 2 days of leave has been approved and your new PTO balance is 23 days. Enjoy your time off. Right. So we asked 3 questions. Question number 1 is some investment advice, which the agent said it cannot provide investment advice. The second one, you're asking for some policy information. The agent knows it needs to go to the knowledge base and get the policy information. The third is more personalized request where you're asking the agent to do some action on your behalf, which is applying some leave. And here it knows that for this particular activity, it needs to invoke the tool to do that. Hopefully this kind of explains how easy is it for you to create a Bedrock agent. Now you can take this Bedrock agent and convert it into an end-to-end flow. Let's quickly look at how to build a flow out of this Bedrock agent. Think of flows as building your application. I'm going to click on flows here and I'm going to create a new flow. I'm going to call it HR assistant. Say create. So this is a drag and drop capability through which you can actually build an end-to-end GenAI application. By default, it provides with 2 nodes. One is for input and one is for the output. Depending upon the functionality of your generative AI application, you can bring in different nodes into the flow. And these nodes range from agents to prompts, to knowledge bases, to Lambda functions, and even some custom logic that you might want to define using collectors, conditions, and iterators. For the purpose of this demo, we're going to drag and drop an agent. As soon as I drop the agent, you can go ahead and configure the agent information. I'm going to say this is a HR agent, and I'm going to select the agent which is HR agent. I'm going to set the alias information as well. The HR agent takes three different inputs. The input prompt in itself, if there are any prompt attributes and session attributes, this is specifically for persona based processing. So prompt attributes and session attributes helps you with memory and persona based. And these are optional, so I'm going to leave it as is. Right. I'm going to delete this particular link and I'm going to put the agent in between. So any request that comes in goes to the agent input. And once the agent has processed this information, I'm going to take the output and put it to the agent out, to the application output. I'm pretty much done with my application. I can make this application as complex as possible by bringing in conditions, iterations, or even building a multi-agent orchestration using flows. I'm going to save and save. Okay. This is already saved. Now I can go ahead and test the agent right here. Let me ask the same question. What is the vacation policy? As you can see, this is a much more structured way of output where it says exactly the same information that we saw when we tested our agents, but this is also providing you with, a much more structured output. So just to recap what we saw, we looked at what are the components of an agent and how each of these components are configured or developed by Bedrock. And then how do you build a Bedrock agent? This is where we looked at the three different steps. And we also looked at how to build a Bedrock agent using an example, which is a HR agent assistant. Thank you.